So welcome. Today we are going to be going through the Week 25 simulated odds for the Premier League. The first match we're going to take a look at is West Ham facing the league leaders and Liverpool on Monday Night Football. This looked like a much more interesting match before the midweek matches where West Ham got beat 3-0 to Wolves and Liverpool failed to take advantage of the Manchester City loss on Tuesday. I still see Liverpool in the driver's seat for the title, even though they failed to extend the lead to 7 points. The big question that I'm going to have for this match is, what do West Ham have to play for? They are safe in the relegation battle, but they are still too far behind to actually make it to the Europa League fight. I see West Ham, probably not being able to match Liverpool, and Liverpool bouncing back and taking all 3 points in this one. Next up is Cardiff City versus Bournemouth in the Saturday night primetime match. Neil Warnock versus Eddie Howe. If that doesn't get your juices flowing, well, then you're probably pretty normal because this isn't the most exciting matchup in the Premier League this weekend. But I still think that there's some interesting things to point out in this one. Cardiff City are not a good team. They are really, really in trouble, and they are most likely going to be relegated. They are sitting in 18th place, so I guess, it's better than 19th or 20th, but they still have a 4-point gap between them and Burnley in 17th. My models gives them a 77% chance of being relegated, so things are really not looking good, and they really need something from these next run of matches to be able to get themselves a chance to survive into next season. Bournemouth, on the other hand, are in good form right now. Looking at the form table over the last 6 matches, they are currently 6th in XG difference between United and Arsenal. So they are not a fluky team who is performing well, although I do think that they are going to be running out of things to actually play for as the season progresses, because I don't think that they have a realistic chance of being able to compete for the Europa League. But they do have some chances to put together some performances. The big thing for me in this match is how Bournemouth will be able to handle having more of the ball, because their success has come in more of a counter-attacking role this season. And I think the other thing is going to be, can Cardiff actually create anything? Looking again at the form table right now over the last 6 matches, Cardiff City are averaging less than 0.5 XG created per game. So it's going to be an interesting one, and if Cardiff want a chance to get out of the relegation, they are going to need to create some offense, and I don't know if they're going to do it. I see Bournemouth probably winning this one. I don't know if they're going to be able to score much, but probably a pretty boring one, with Bournemouth the favorites to take the points. Moving on to the next match is the early match on Super Sunday, Leicester City versus Manchester United. This is another one that I find actually pretty intriguing, and one that I'm excited to be able to get up early and watch. Can't really say that I've said that very often against Manchester United, but this one I think will be an interesting one, and I think that it's going to be a good one with 2 teams in top form. I'm also a big fan of Claude Puel and the way that the Leicester team has really rebuilt and restructured their team from that surprise title winners. This is something that I shared earlier last week, and it shows Leicester City's minutes given to each player by age grouping and the number of XG and XJ each player has contributed to the team. And I think this really does a great job of illustrating how well Leicester City have moved on from the old title-winning players that usually would be such a problem for teams as they really try to hold on to the past glory. So you see that there's a number of players that are just coming into their peak years. While they still have Jamie Vardy there, it looks like they are in good shape over the next few seasons, and something that I think it's going to be very interesting to watch to see how they do. Now let's go back to the match. The model predicts Manchester United to be the heavy favorites in this one, but I still think that this is going to be a lot closer than what the model says. Just based on how Leicester City like to play, they really do a good job of playing on the counter-attack, and I think that Manchester United is going to have the majority of the ball, even though they are the away team in this match. And I think that Jamie Vardy is going to be the dangerous one, along with Demarai Gray, and I really like James Maddison and the way that he has been included in this team, and he's probably one of the more exciting signings of the season so far. So I think that while United are the favorites in this one, and for good reason, I think that Leicester City, like they showed against Liverpool, are not a team that can be looked past easily. I don't have a ton to say about this one. It's one of the 7 a.m. kickoffs for me, and there's a number of other games that I will probably find myself watching a little bit more closely. The only thing I can really say is that this looks to be a pretty even match. I don't really have a rooting interest either way, so alright, let's move on. Burnley vs. Southampton is another one of the 7 a.m. Saturday kickoffs that isn't going to get a lot of attention from me, but it is more interesting to me than Brighton vs. Watford. And that is primarily due to Southampton's Ralph Hasenhüttl. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but I am going to lean into the hashtag brand of not being able to pronounce names. I think that he's actually done a really good job with Southampton. Before he took over, Southampton were underperforming XG by quite a bit, and probably the largest margin in the league. And now, since he's taken over, they are right about where is expected, and that has lifted them from a relegation fighter to a team that is comfortably bottom table. And I think over the course of a season would probably be a mid-table team, maybe fighting for a Europa League spot, which is about where I think that Southampton should be. Burnley, on the other hand, have not been able to continue their defiance of the XG gods, and while Sean Dyche might be a warlock, he has not been able to continue that this season. I really am not sad to see that, and I wouldn't be sad to see Burnley go down. Well, it looks like they probably won't. I hope Southampton win this one, but I really don't care either way too much. Another of the 7 a.m. Saturday kickoffs, this one is Everton versus Wolves, and this one will probably get the second screen experience as my attention will most likely be on Chelsea, as that has greater implications on Arsenal and their top four finish, but this one has its own implications, and this one's going to be on the Europa League and who's going to finish 7th. So this is probably a big six-pointer in that fight. I think Wolves will probably edge Everton, but this one will go a long ways. If Everton are able to get the win here, they could put themselves in a good spot to get that last Europa League spot. And I think that it'll be an interesting one to see how they do against a very good defensive Wolves. So I might actually be interested in this one, and depending on how the other results go, this one might get bumped up to the main big screen. Another of the 7 a.m. kickoffs. This one falls in the category of ones that I don't really care all that much about. Fulham, unfortunately, are likely to be relegated. Crystal Palace are safe. I'm not really fighting for anything else. I expect Crystal Palace to win, but Fulham, they might shock and they might get some points. I don't think so, though. Let's move on. And now we move to the main 7 a.m. kickoff match that I am going to be watching. It is Chelsea versus Huddersfield. The model still gives Chelsea a healthy lead in this match and most likely to get the points, but Chelsea are in the middle of full-on crisis. Over the last 6 matches, they have just 3 goals and have been able to produce just under 1 XG per match. On the defensive side, something that looked so solid over the first half of the season has now solidly gone to crap. They have conceded 8 goals, 4 of them coming against Bournemouth, and they are conceding over 1 XG per match. So over the last 6 games, they are in negative goal difference. If this is bad, and especially bad is that they have had to turn to the inflated corpse of Gonzalo Higuain, another one, hashtag unpronounceable name that I can't do. And let's take a look at the shots that they've produced over the last 6 games. Yeah, so that's not pretty. There is almost nothing coming from inside that 6-yard box. You can see where Hazard is over there on the left, and that is where he has been able to get some of his shots off. But other than that, there's really a whole lot of not very much. And I don't know if Higuain is going to be the answer for that at this age. So it'll be interesting what Huddersfield can do. I don't expect them to create much in offense, but to see if they can actually restrict what Chelsea are able to do on the creative side will be the big key for them if they want to be able to get a point out of this, and if they really want to help Arsenal out in their chances of getting into the top 4. I would much appreciate if they could. The early match Saturday morning is Tottenham versus Newcastle, and I think this is going to be an interesting to watch. Newcastle has actually started to play a little bit better. Rafa Benitez has been able to sort out a bit of the defense, and Tottenham are in the middle of their own injury crisis on offense and really are going to be struggling, I think, against this Newcastle team. I'm going to show on the next slide how good Newcastle has been over the last 6 matches. And I think it's going to be a bit surprising. I think that while Tottenham are the favorites, I don't think that 3 points in this one is quite as guaranteed as what my model says. So taking a look at the Newcastle defense, the thing that really jumps out is really just how well they have done at suppressing shots. You have to remember, this also includes their last match against Manchester City, who normally just pummel teams with shots. So to be able to only allow 34 over the last 6 matches is pretty impressive. Even more impressive is the 22 per match that they are showing. That is less than 4 allowed per match from open play. So Rafa Benitez has really gotten his team doing what Rafa Benitez does, and that is defending deep and defending well. So I think against Tottenham, where they are going to be hurting for offense, this is going to be a really tough matchup for them, and I think that Newcastle has a good chance of getting a point in this one. So hopefully they do, so come on you tune, we're all pulling for you. Last but not least is Manchester City hosting Arsenal. Let's just say I'm not optimistic going into this one. So while Manchester City may not be at their swashbuckling self best, like they were earlier in the season while they were just cutting teams open, I still think that they will probably have more than enough to really push back the defensively depleted Arsenal back line, where Arsenal are going to be choosing between Stefan Lichtsteiner at right back and the great Carl Jenkinson. They might even throw in the Dinos Marvapanos into the middle of the center back pairing. So this is all sorts of trouble written all over it. Arsenal are currently in the top 4, but really just on goals scored. I bet by the time that Sunday is through, they will no longer be. So if they're able to get a point out of this one, it's going to be great. That is really just the icing on the cake. Hopefully they can do something like that. I'm not optimistic. Hopefully they can not embarrass themselves, because that's really always my guess when I go into these matches that are big. So go on, Arsenal. I'm so excited. We'll end talking about the title, top 4, and relegation odds. So Liverpool really came out of the midweek matches looking good, even with them dropping 2 points against Leicester. They are the prohibitive favorites for the title. I also have them just coming in under 90 points would be very impressive. Manchester City really hurt themselves with the loss against Newcastle, but they should be pretty much solidified in the top 4. Tottenham, although they are running into the injury problems, they are looking good for the top 4. The last spot, however, between Arsenal, Chelsea, and Manchester United is still wide open. Arsenal are currently the leaders on goals scored, but overall I think that this is going to come down to the very end, and it's going to be which team really screws up less between the 3 of them. Switching our focus down to the bottom of the table, the relegation is just about set, so it looks like Huddersfield is all but relegated. Fulham are in a lot of trouble, and Cardiff are in about the same. So it's really going to be, can either of them catch Burnley? I think Newcastle is safe. That win against Manchester City really put them in a good spot to be able to stay up. I'm also, not worried about Crystal Palace either. So I think that we're not going to have much of a relegation fight coming down the stretch. So thank you all for listening to this. Follow me on Twitter if you don't already, and thank you.